Hello everyone, Trisha, it's me, Jenny, and it's time for another not naked video response to Trisha Hershberger's series Naked Truth, where we talk as candidly and as truthfully as possible about a subject of Trisha Hershberger's choosing. Straight out the shower, no makeup, wet hair, first take, one take. Most people choose to do it naked. I choose not to, but either way it's not a sexual thing, it's a being vulnerable thing, and I'm sorry that I'm speaking quite fast and I'm using a handheld camera instead of my tripod. I'm in a bit of a rush today, so it's going to be a quick video. Today's subject is Batman vs Superman, and I think I've discussed it before at some point, but there's an argument to be said whether or not you're arguing for a battle royale story or a, if two characters were actually facing off in a battle, like whether or not it's that sort of argument, or whether or not it's a story-based argument which has the more compelling story, which one has the better character. And to be honest, I can't really throw my shoe in too much into the argument because, without actually stating that I'm a Marvel fangirl, I can't honestly say that I am that aware of the DC universe. I can't really say that I've read a Batman or a Superman comic at any point. Equally, I can't really say that I have read a Spider-Man comic or a Captain America comic. I think I've read one Iron Man comic, and that's mostly from the perspective of someone who is very much a completist, and the concept of all these competing universes without the, actual official story. Slash, all of the, additional information that you get and where to start on comics always kind of freaks me out as a concept, because comics have been going on for a very, 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 very long time, so not being able to have an actual official, finalised, this is the ultimate version of these stories, although there is ultimate versions of pretty much any comic book character, that doesn't necessarily mean that's the final and official version of those characters, and that is great in many ways because you can find any story that you like from any of those characters, and you can find a story that works for you. You can find a Batman story that you can find is the most emotive story. You can find a Superman story that's, if you're after a grimy character, you can find a grimy Superman. If you're after a sweet and heroic character version of Superman, you can find slightly more of those. Same with Batman. If you want a slightly more kind of idealistic Batman, there are versions of that out there. Because there are so many different versions. And I love adaptations. I really do love adaptations, but the thing that I really like about adaptations is you have the solid version to compare something to, and then you have the offshoots. So I have multiple versions of Jane Austen films, but I know that the official version is the books. With Superman and all of the superheroes, Batman and Superman and all of the other ones, it's so hard to find a finalised version that I've never really kind of invested much time in actually reading the comics. When it comes to films, I've watched the Nolan Batmans, but I can't remember ever being able to watch an entire other Batman. Mostly because I found it too scary when I was a kid. And when it comes to Superman, I can remember watching Lois and Superman when I was very young, and I can remember catching Smallville here and there, but I've never really been that invested in that universe. And the thing that I really like about the Marvel universe, not to turn this into a Marvel versus DC argument, is the fact that, they started with the cinematic universes, which is their official baseline. It's a starting point, and that starting point was within my generation. So I could start with these characters and actually learn with them without having to read thousands and thousands of comic books or trying to choose which plot line I'm going for from the comic books and choose which version of a character I'm going for. I can just stick with that set finite universe, which is so much easier and appeals to my sense of completism. So yeah, when it comes to Batman vs Superman, I think probably my favourite argument that I've ever heard, which was a movie fight, Screen Junkies Movie Fights, which of course Trisha is part of. You should check it out, it's a great channel. And one of their episodes was if there was a battle royale between 3 members of the Justice League, who would win? And I believe it was Batman versus Superman versus Wonder Woman. And in that argument, Wonder Woman won, I believe, because Superman's only real weakness is magic, and she has potential for that. And so it was really It was a really interesting argument, and oh my god, it's been 5 minutes already. Ha! My alarm's going off. Yes, it was a really interesting argument, and I really enjoyed that debate. When you added a third character, you actually see the weaknesses in both of them. When it comes to, you know, the equivalent in the Marvel Universe of the Batman and the Superman character, obviously you go to Tony Stark and you go to Iron Man, but I feel like, for the most part, Marvel does a better job about making its most powerful characters still more vulnerable than DC's most powerful characters. If you say, you know, Iron Man is the equivalent of Batman, yes, he has better tech, but he also has, like, probably an equal number of issues as Bruce Wayne, and he's got a character that's got slightly more interest for me personally. Same with Captain America versus Superman. Like, Clark Kent's a very interesting character, but I feel like there's a lot more genuine vulnerability to Captain America than there is to Superman. Like, Superman is pretty much this powerhouse of all the powers, and Captain America, as the Marvel equivalent, is basically just a really great athlete. That is his thing. Like, he's not bulletproof, he doesn't have laser eyes, he can't fly. And that is something that's very interesting to me if you compare archetypes. Archetype comparing is really interesting. I think the archetype of the, you know, idealistic superhero versus the slightly more grimy superhero is really interesting. And the archetypes that Batman and Superman within themselves is really interesting. Batman vs Superman in a battle royale, I think I'd have to go with Superman. Batman vs Superman in terms of plot points, I think because the Batman Rose Gallery is so much more interesting and complex than the Superman's Rose Gallery, you usually get more compelling stories just because the villains are much more compelling. When it comes to choosing either of their characters, like, to sit down and have a cup of tea with, I'd go with Superman, but then again, I probably really wouldn't invite either of them to tea because that would involve my house being destroyed. I've already got to run, I've been talking way too long. I hope I said something. Feel free to comment, and I'll see you guys all next week. Bye guys!